Welcome to the No Fall Zone, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of FWT snowboarders and skiers. I'm your host, Dave Mailman, and together with longtime FWT photographer Dom Daer, we're going to lift the curtain and give you a glimpse into what life is really like for the Freeride World Tour riders. This podcast is made possible by Peak Performance. Thank you, guys.
3, 2, 1, drop in.
Our third No Fall Zone invitee was an 11-year FWT veteran when she retired from competitive skiing in March 2020. A perennial title contender, her no-holds-barred attitude on and off the mountain earned the respect of her peers. There's still no slowing down the 2016 Yeti Extreme Verbier champion. Once one of Lake Tahoe's finest, this 41-year-old is now the hardest-charging mom on the slopes of Åre, Sweden. In her latest project, she co-stars alongside former FWT champion Elise Saugstad in the critically acclaimed comedy ski film, Here, Hold My Kid. This is Jackie Paaso. Jackie, welcome to the podcast. First of all, is it Paaso or Paaso? Because I called you Jackie Paaso for years on the webcast, and apparently I got it wrong.
I mean, it depends on who you ask. These days I go back and forth. In the States, my family said Paaso, but if you're talking to a Finn, it's Paaso.
Okay. So it's a Finnish origin. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there we go. Well, since we're in Europe, well, Paaso. I always said Paaso. So Paaso, Paaso, Paaso. Tomato, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All good. Listen, it's been quite a few years since we last last had the pleasure of hanging out with you. I don't know if it's always a pleasure hanging out with me. That was at Chamonix in 2017. We had a nice little chat with Eva Volkner, and yeah, so it's really good to be back in touch. And we'll touch on the actual subject of that conversation we had with Eva. Do you remember sitting in that bar in Chamonix, the three of us together? It was I'll give you a slight hint. It was at a sit down for one of the sponsors. I don't know. It was a sponsor shindig. I don't know if you remember or not, but there was like a little photo shoot going on. It was like a press junket type thing.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I struggle to remember a lot of things these days.
Well, there you go. So do I.
But I don't forget you. I haven't forgotten you, and it's always a pleasure.
All good, fantastic. Okay, well, I hope you're comfortable. We're going to talk about the early days. So you were born in Boston, grew up in Bethel, Maine. Is it Bethel or Bethel?
Bethel, yeah, Bethel, Maine.
There we go. Grew up in Bethel, Maine. So talk me through your childhood, early days, skiing, competing. I heard you have a great little story about your first time ever hitting a jump. And then we'll move on to East Coast skiing, because I know growing up skiing on the East Coast is a rather unique experience.
Right. Yeah. So I'm originally from Massachusetts. If anybody follows American football, I lived for
Patriots.
a long time in exactly Foxborough, Mass. So my dad, we were, I guess, originally a football family. My dad was a football player, used to hang out while my dad would train the Patriots back in the day. We would watch their practices. My dad would train with them. And I don't know, I guess when I was around 4 years old, my dad was introduced to skiing via some family friends, and the whole family got into it. So that football side of the family never really took off, and fortunately. So it was more about skiing and mountain biking and all sorts of things. So eventually we made our way from Foxborough, Mass up to Bethel, Maine, where I finished my through high school and everything there, and learned how to ski in the East Coast.
And you were at Sunday River, I believe. Was that your local resort or your local hill?
That's correct. Yeah, it's
All
a mountain.
right.
We're not in Michigan.
Fair enough. All good. Yes, we're not Midwest. We are East Coast. There's plenty of fantastic mountains up there. I went to high school in New Hampshire, so I definitely spent a lot of time. Not that often. I don't think I ever went to Sunday River, but did get up to Sugarloaf and then spent a lot of time skiing Stowe and Killington as well. So what was it like growing up skiing on the East Coast? I guess it was the only thing you knew, really. It wasn't one of these things where you'd been skiing in Utah or California or something like that and could compare to the fantastic West Coast powder.
I mean, back then I was a mogul skier. So I had spent most of my life, and that's not saying much as what I was up until the point I was 12, only skiing in the East Coast. And yeah, that's all I knew. So it was the best thing ever. And back then, I mean, there was no social media. You didn't see really what everybody else was doing. So you're just worried about, what was in front of you. It was so refreshing. And,
tell me about it.
And yeah, I think when I was 12 or 13, I went out west for the first time. I think it was for junior nationals. And that was the first time I made out west. But then I was still skiing moguls, or dare I even say a little bit of ballet.
Freestyle ballet has changed from ballet skiing to trying to dance with dumb things stuck on your feet. Kind of a drum majorette practice session.
Acro skiing. It wasn't really that much exposed. I wasn't thinking about powder or anything like that. I wasn't exposed to bigger mountains. So what I took away from that experience was that the weather was much nicer, but the interest for bigger mountains really wasn't there quite yet.
And so 12, 13, you were already competing in junior nationals. When did you actually start skiing competitively? When did you start skiing, period? And when did you start saying, hey, this is kind of cool. I want to go fast and hit the bumps?
I was 4 when I started skiing, and I was 9 when I started the freestyle team.
Okay.
And maybe competed the first time. I think maybe I competed the first time when I was like 10 or 11.
Okay, so it was a quick evolution from first mogul contests to junior nationals.
Yeah, I guess so. Never really thought about that. I think I made it for acro skiing.
Okay.
Which wasn't super competitive back then. Or maybe ever, really. But I took the chance to go out west, and I think maybe it was acro skiing and upright aerials is that first junior nationals. I can't remember if I actually skied moguls.
Okay.
But later on,
right.
Moguls was my thing. Maybe when I was 13, I was there for moguls.
Exactly, and your goal was to make the Olympic team.
Yeah. My goal was to, like any child in competitive sport, my goal was to win the Olympics. But skiing, he got the whole family into the sport. As soon as I discovered mogul skiing, I kind of fell in love with it for as long as I can remember. I knew about the Olympics, and that kind of quickly became my dream that I wanted to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal. But that didn't happen.
Fair enough. I grew up being as a surfer, so for me that wasn't one of my goals, but it's all good for regular children who don't grow up on the beach in the West Coast. No, fair enough. No, and you're right, and it didn't happen, which takes us on to, so at this point where you're, 18 when you were really trying to make the Olympic team or make the national team? Because I believe it was you were aiming for the national team and it didn't happen.
So I went to Junior Worlds, I think when I was 17 and 18, and it's all kind of a bit of a blur, but I remember when I had just turned 17. I was at senior nationals, and I think that year I was second in the national rankings for dual moguls, and had just missed the podium for nationals senior title at 16, 17. So I was kind of hoping it would happen that following year, but it it didn't. Yeah.
And when it didn't happen, it was quite a blow, to say the least. And just to backstep a little bit, were your happy childhood up to that point, or when you weren't winning every single contest, were you already starting to get a little bit dark?
I mean, it wasn't even after that point. I still kept fighting for a few more years, but I think the real struggle came from is that sport. There wasn't really a lot of financial support back in the day, and it felt like they were really focusing towards the athletes that had the financial support from their families to go further, to take them further. Because I know there are a few there's like one of the guys who was a junior, 15 or 16 years old, Travis Cabral, I think he won senior nationals when he was like 15 years old, which is unheard of. Mm-hmm. And he barely got on the team. Like there still was a struggle because he came from more of an average, like lower income family, I think, right, if I'm remembering correctly. Because in the US, it was an expensive sport back then. It's maybe even more expensive these days. And my family, they're struggling to make ends meet. So for me, what made it hard was that I was chasing this dream, but I was also this is at the sacrifice of my parents and my family. Like, they were giving up a lot. Yeah.
The unfairness of the situation, that it wasn't just on your sporting or athletic merits, but also the financial background as well, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to, right? Yeah. I mean, it's hard to work really hard for something, but keep the focus when you start struggling a little bit, when you know that everyone in your family is sacrificing. I mean, we had periods where we didn't have a car. We had moved. Mom and dad didn't have jobs for periods of time. And I still had a younger brother and I have an older sister. And it was just, it felt like I had to be 100% in it. And even then I had to be 100% in it and like moving in the right direction in order to feel good about these sacrifices continuing to be made. And it wasn't until after I made the call that, okay, my heart's not in it right now. I need to walk away. And I was around 20, 21 at that time. It wasn't until after when I was like, that's when things got dark. That's when I didn't know what to do with my life anymore.
And that's when, I mean, it's been well covered in other medias and the Pal Movement podcast. And there's a really good article about you on powder.com. So I don't really want to dwell on it. But in Evolution of Dreams, you said you'd OD'd at the end of your mogul career. And in other media have called it attempted suicide. And in Powder, you say it was a cry for help, first in 2004, then again in 2009. But you ended up taking too much prescription medication and ended up in the hospital. How would you, sitting here today, how do you look back on, especially the episode in 2004, I guess?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that with Evolution of Dreams, because that's something that I cringe every time I hear that part, because that whole side of the story was kind of thrown on me at the last minute. And so when I say OD'd, I feel like people don't quite understand. I attempted suicide in 2004 and then again in 2009 by overdosing on prescription medicine. That's what happened. I'm not proud of it. I'm fortunate that, I mean, it was a combination of all those things. I did attempt suicide. It was a cry for help, and I did OD. But it's something that happened. It's something that I, of course, wish never happened. But it's just my reality. And I can't say that I'm totally fine nowadays. It's still something that I have to monitor because I can get dark. Yeah. And I have to try and stay on top of it. But I think when it kind of hits hard is when I hear about other, especially like athletes, because people within skiing that have passed away from suicide, especially when they're young, like I was the first time in my early 20s. You think that everything you've done up until that point, if you make a mistake, you think the world is over. And that's just not the reality. You still have so much time ahead of you. And I was fortunate that wasn't successful in my suicide attempt, or I'm not sure if that's the right choice of words.
We're all very glad that you were not successful in your suicide attempt, Jackie.
I mean, but unfortunately, not everyone that hasn't been the case. And I know that there have been some athletes like in our free skiing world that have passed away because of that. And I just wish that, I can't be there to help everyone, but I wish somebody could have been there to help them realize that even though life might suck at the moment, it's not the end all be all. There's so much more life ahead, and you'll never know where your life will end up. But
no, indeed. And I think nowadays I think it's more out in the open, and there's a better support system for athletes, especially obviously high-profile athletes who are struggling with depression or other mental problems. But it's definitely unfortunate is an understatement, to say the least. Were the circumstances? What's not a question. The circumstances between 2004 and 2009, though, were definitely different.
Yeah, the first incident was, I'd say, what you would kind of. I had a panic, and this was unfortunately my default. Sad to say, I didn't really think about it, but the reason why 2009 happened is because the shame that I had after the incident with 2004 was so hard for me to get away from. That shame made moving forward really hard because of the stigma that mental health had, especially back then. And I struggled. I didn't want to ask for help. I didn't want to admit that I was going through all of this because I was ashamed and I was afraid about what people were saying, how people viewed me. And when you're already dealing with depression, to add all these things on top of that is really difficult. And my parents didn't really, they care, they love me, but they didn't really know how to handle the situation. My friends, I have amazing friends, and they were trying their best. But what I really should have done was gotten the help, worked towards getting the help. And it's a process. It's you might not find the right person to talk to right off the bat, but you have to keep searching for that person. But I was just ashamed. I didn't want to admit that I needed help. And that's why things never fully healed between 2004 and 2009. And
at the same time, you also, that's when you moved from Maine to California, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in that period, I kind of I had made the move out west. Was originally going to stop in Utah, and then decided to continue westward and meet up with some of my friends that I knew from back east. That was also probably part of it. Palisades.
And Palisades. And that was kind of, even today, Palisades is kind of the place to be. But back then, there was some serious crew that were hanging out there. And I think you've spoken about this as well in some other interviews, but it was kind of once again, the place to be. And you'd think that, it's all the beautiful people, happy life. But even amongst all of that and switching from moguls to getting your start in freeriding, I guess you weren't very happy. But how was the transition from Maine to California?
Oh, I don't know. I I think the first few years I was back and forth a lot between the East Coast and the West Coast. I hadn't fully committed to the move to California. It was very different. I moved out to Tahoe, and there's all these big professional skiers, but coming from the East Coast, I didn't really know that much about any of the big skiers. They weren't on my radar. For some reason, I had it in my mind that I wanted to be a mountaineer or something. I just wanted to get outside of the mogul course, and I wanted to get out into the mountains and explore a bit more. And I didn't even realize that big mountain skiing was a thing. I thought I had to hike up and hike down the mountains in order to be able to explore some more. So
you weren't a Warren Miller fan?
No, I'd heard of it, but not really.
Okay, wow.
I think my fans back then, or people I looked up to as far as skiing, was Sergei Shupashov and Donna Weinbrecht and all these mogul skiers. Jean-Luc Brassard. I had a little bit of knowledge as far as the park slopestyle scene because I also grew up skiing with Christy Leskinen, and I knew Tanner Hall. They were mogul skiers back in the day, and the same with Sarah Burke. And so I was so focused on my mogul skiing, but I saw these other friends of mine taking this transition towards park skiing. And I was nope, I'm a mogul skier. I'm going to continue this way. And so when I moved out west, it was only park skiers I knew about. And I had a little bit of jealousy because I felt like, oh, I kind of missed that. Like I could have jumped on the boat when Christy did and like been a part of that. But at the same time, I loved mogul skiing and that was my focus. And so I kept going in that direction. And then I dabbled a bit in park skiing, but it wasn't my thing. I was still just not really exploring the mountain. It was still the same run over and over again. And it wasn't until I met some friends and kind of spent time at Palisades, I started discovering what big mountain skiing was and thought, maybe this is...
Who were some of those people?
One of my best friends who fortunately isn't with us anymore is Timmy Dutton. He was on the tour back in the day when I first started as well. JT Holmes was part of the crew. Michelle Parker. I think as far as professional skiers, I have, of course, a ton of other friends from the area that were also huge influences, but those were the professional skiers that I was kind of hanging out with.
The key ones. And speaking of JT Holmes, I heard that he had a special nickname for you. I heard there was plenty of killer nicknames going around Tahoe and Palisades at the time, but apparently JT had a really good one for you. And I don't know what it is. I've just been told by Ben Benson to ask you. So what was JT's nickname for you?
Oh, Ben, you're gonna get it. Basically, everyone had call signs. JT was, I can't even remember what JT was. Michelle was Black Panther, which was awesome. I was Emo Turtle, which is not awesome. JT was like, it's funny because I wouldn't say I was a lot closer with Timmy, and Timmy and JT were really close. But I feel like JT is a big reason for why I got out of my depression. Because he was such an asshole, but in a good way.
Yeah, I heard he even told you that you were a bummer to hang around. That was the quotes that I found from. Yeah,
it's true. And it was, fortunately, it came at a time where I could actually take that in and not go in the wrong direction. But I could take it in and be like, well, that's not what I want people to say about me. And I was able to take that and move in the right direction. So I love that asshole.
Awesome. All right. So couple little highlights from back then. Kirkwood 2006 apparently was your first big free ride competition that kind of put you on the map. And then you won the Snowbird free ride in 2008, and you won the Sick Bird Award. You were the first woman in 11 years to win that. So that was at this point and 2008 was also the first year of the Freeride World Tour. So at this point, were you really starting to think that this was the next big thing for you, was competitive free riding?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really fully understand what the Freeride World Tour was back then, but when I was on the Free Skiing World Tour and started to have some success, I definitely was thinking like, okay, maybe this is a direction that I can explore a little bit more and see where things lead. And it was fun. I was enjoying it. Yeah, definitely.
But at the same time, you were still obviously having trouble controlling your depression. And so it was in fall of 2009 that you were back home, and this was when you'd found out that your mom had cancer as well, I believe.
Yeah, I think there were some other things going on in my life that I wasn't that excited about, and then my mom's sickness, it was kind of like the final straw, and I was really struggling. And because I never dealt with my first episode, I never was fully healed, so I wasn't in a place where I could handle. So I just kind of fell to the pressure. And the difference this time was that when it happened, I was in the hospital, and I told them, I was like, I need help. I said I wanted to go. I said I would do whatever I needed to get help. So they locked me on a mental ward for a week, which was not very helpful for me. But
apparently not. And to the point that your mom came in and said, "This isn't happening. She's out of here."
She had to pull the cancer card to get me out of there. She was like, I don't know how much longer I've left. Because they wanted to have me committed because I wasn't taking part in their activities. And, for some people, art and talking and reading and that, for some people that's like a meditation for them. But for me, it's really being in the outdoors. So being locked on the floor.
Away from everything you love.
Away from everything I love with people that don't understand what I love was not a healing experience for me. So my parents had they went to the hospital. They fought to get me out. And we were kind of in this like, all right, I'm going to go back west, but I'm going to talk to somebody. I'm going to get help. And that was kind of like they were okay with me going as long as I sought after help. And I started with one person and didn't quite fit, but then I found another person that was like right down at the base in Olympic Valley, understood the lifestyle, understood what I was trying to accomplish in my life and everything. And that was a really good fit for me. And that person helped me get to a point where I could, move to a better place in life.
Awesome. And not long after that, your whole adventure with the Freeride World Tour started. The Freeride World Tour archives have you competing in Squaw Valley as an event wildcard in 2009. You finished 6th place.
Paaso. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drop in.
And then you competed in the entire 2010 season on tour, but you had to get a wild card to get back into the Squaw Valley event that you ended up winning. Tell me about how did the whole thing with the Freeride World Tour happen? Because back in the day, there wasn't the whole Freeride World Qualifier Challenger events. And then, you make the tour. I guess it was still a lot of, you needed a wild card to get into events on an event to contest basis.
So we didn't have the qualifiers in North America at that point because there's still the other series going on. I had kind of like ruled it out after my performance in 2009 because it was nothing to speak of. 6 doesn't sound that bad on paper, but there were like 10 of us, so it wasn't that great. But I was talking to JT a little bit at the beginning of the season. He's like, "Oh, what are you going to do? You're going to do the tour?" I was like, "Oh, I'm not in." And he said he would ask them for me or give a good reference. And I think it was the next day I received an email getting an invite to Chamonix. And Chamonix, of course, I lose a buckle on the hike up to the start, a boot buckle. So that didn't go so well. And then I think that year, the women were also like kind of half on the tour, half in the qualifiers. So we had an event in Fieberbrunn. I don't remember exactly, but apparently it wasn't enough for them to want to give me a wild card to the next event at Palisades. And it was a little bit hard for me what?
No, I was saying, so that's where JT stepped in and told Nico that he needed to give you a wild card?
No, not at all. I think I had all the girls like Anna Inrud and Janina Kuzma. They were staying with me. They were competing because back then we didn't get lodging. And they were like, "You need to ask Nico. You need to ask him." So I remember being at a bar the night before the contest, and this is like against everything, but he's like, but I asked him, and first I was like, I don't know, no. And then a couple beers in, because the girls were like, you need to keep asking. And I asked him again, and eventually wear him down, and he said yes. I think maybe the girls were kind of in the background, like, you have to give it to her. So, nobody knew, even like some of my close friends, nobody knew the morning of that I was in the contest. I remember inspecting my line, and some of my friends were like, "Oh, next year, Jackie, you'll get in there next year." I was like, no, I get to go. So after that event and winning it and everything, I remember Nico said like, that was a good wild card. So he was happy.
No doubt. So you were wild carded. It was actually Fieberbrunn was the first event of the year. At least I'm looking at the final overall rankings right now, and Fieberbrunn was the first event of the year, and Sham was the second. Or do you think it was the reverse?
The reverse.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go with you. But yeah, Sham, you finished like middle of the pack. I think like 6th out of 12. It looks like, or 13. 14. And then Fieberbrunn, there was only 8 of you, and you finished last. So Nico is probably going, "Oh yeah, huh."
Yeah, I think technically I fell in both events, but then after the Palisades event, I was in first in the rankings. So it was weird. I don't really understand how that all added up.
Yeah, well, the Freeride World Tour points through the years have there's been some very interesting evolutions, and I think a lot of us have not always understood exactly how they've done the points. Yeah, so you had the golden bib going into Verbier, and then what happened?
Well, in JT's words, you could have had it all, but then you didn't. I found a big cliff. I wanted to hit it, and I did, and it didn't go so well. And I ended up, I think, third overall instead of winning the overall title, which I didn't fully understand. It wasn't a thing. Like now all these athletes are like, I got to win the overall. Like it wasn't, I think it was not until like 5 or 6 years later when I realized like, that would have been nice if I won the overall title the first year. But back then, I don't know.
Back then you were just sending it. It was go big or go home, I guess. From Squaw to Verbier, you just kind of, that cliff looks like one for me. That's been your trademark ever since, pretty much.
Yeah, there was a rock underneath that one, so unfortunately,
I know that was, cliff. In your defense, everybody thought that you were sticking it until you didn't, and then obviously, there's that huge rock in the bomb hole. So these things happen, unfortunately. But we're going to segue from that one back into the little conversation that you don't remember, but that I do vividly with you, me, and Ava in Chamonix, because 2017. You had won Verbier the year before. Ava had already was already a world champion, but hadn't won Verbier. And our discussion was actually about that exact topic, which is more prestigious, winning the overall or winning the extreme, because obviously quite a few people have won both, but there are world champions that have never won an extreme, and champions of the extreme, such as yourself, who's never won a world title. And I remember the two of you just going, "Oh no, I'd trade you for it."
Yeah.
So, and when you retired, you said that's actually now one of your regrets that you you never won the overall.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it could have happened. It would have been nice. I'm the only person, well, now Tor's here, but I was the only person in my house that wasn't a world champion in their senior years. And Reina's won Verbier as well, so I can't pull that. And he's won it multiple times. If you ask Reine, you're not truly a world champion until you've won both Verbier and the overall.
Aha, there you go. He holds that over you, does he?
He holds it over Trudell, I think.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's right. He's never won Verbier.
It has to be from the top.
Yeah, of course. Well, do you think they're ever going to go back to the top?
I don't know.
The way things are going, that might not happen.
Oh man.
Wow. Okay. So how did the tour life change your life? I have my personal opinion, which is that Freeride World Tour saved your life. But it sounds like from our discussion that you were already on your way to saving yourself with a little help from your friend in Olympic Valley. But how did things change for you once you were on tour for good?
I think it gave me a new passion and like a new purpose in life, something to work for. And that's something that I really needed. I needed some direction. And after having spent so many years dedicated to mogul skiing and having the goals within that sport, to have it not quite get to the point where I wanted it to, I needed something else. And I think that's what the Freeride World Tour gave me, that I was looking for. And then of course I met Reine. I made tons of amazing friends. I now have a child. I mean, all of it's thanks to the World Tour. And I guess you could go as far back as saying all of it's thanks to Nico giving me that wild card back in Tahoe. So I just had to keep qualifying after that.
Which it was kind of, go big or go home. Some years it just didn't all come together, and then other years it really did. It was quite a roller coaster ride, I guess, and lots of ups and downs from the beginning until the end.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. I was never into playing it safe, unless I had no choice. So usually I would go out of the gate trying to find the lines that I thought were the most interesting, and sometimes it didn't work out in the result of a crash or just a very uninteresting run, and other times it did work out. And those times when it did work out, I think that feeling, those moments were pretty amazing and some of the best times. And then there are moments where I had to play it safe, and I had some success also when I played it safe, but it just wasn't as much fun playing it safe. So I'm sure many of my friends, especially, gave us thoughts. The reason why I never became the world champion, because I did not like to play the game.
You made it really exciting for those of us that are watching from behind the screens or from the bottom of the mountain. So thanks for that. So you won 7 events from 10 seasons. There was 1 season that you were injured, didn't compete. Obviously, Squaw and Verbier were 2 fabulous victories for you. Are there any other ones that stood out, or are those the 2 big ones for you?
Honestly, Verbier was not that awesome. It wasn't, it's awesome because it's Verbier Extremes, but other than that, the run was just mediocre. I just dealt with flat light and less than ideal snow conditions better than the rest of the ladies. I think 2 of the victories I had in Chamonix, I think it was 2012 and 2014.
2012 and 2014.
Yeah, I think those were more exciting. Those were runs where I set out to do something bigger and had success with that. And those were fun.
Yeah, those were those were awesome. And speaking about one of the times where you were so close to having one of the best runs of your career, it didn't quite happen, was 2019 in Hakuba, when you sent one of the first ever backflips attempted in competition by the women.
And she's heading to the first big drop, going with a big backflip. Oh no, just under-rotated. Oh,
Sick,
no.
Jackie. She's always been one to push the boundaries with the size of cliffs, the speed of lines, now tricks.
Martin McFly on the webcast said that there had been previous attempts. Dom Daer insists that it was the first ever backflip attempted in competition by a woman. But you front flipped on the landing. You stayed on your feet. It was kind of like squaw, where you back slapped, but then you popped right back up and kept riding. And then Hedvig Vessel sent off the same feature and stuck it. Were you bummed for her, or were you bummed for you, or were you stoked for her when that happened? What was going on in your head?
I was embarrassed because I think that might have been, if it is a first, it's the ugliest. Although Reine had a really ugly one that year that he could have won the Tour and lost it all in Verbier.
Oh, yeah.
So that might be equally as ugly. For me, it was more, I was in my late 30s when I skied moguls. Backflips weren't even legal back then. So it was just starting to come into the thing. So I didn't grow up doing backflips and moguls like Hedvig had. So I kind of didn't start doing it until that year. So as a 38-year-old or however old I was trying to do a backflip, it would have been nice to land it, or maybe it would have been fun to do something else. I think, I don't know. Was I stoked for Hedvig? I don't know. Was it? I'll be completely honest. It's cool to see Hedvig pushing it, but I think that it's really important to know what came before you. And that year, there was so much talk about the women pushing it and everything and the progression. There, like McFly said, I don't remember anybody else attempting on the Freeride World Tour, females at least. I know on the Free Skiing World Tour, other women had done backflips, I think even landed. So it wasn't anything new. And I think it's really important that you know your history and you know what's come before you. And I think that was the thing around that it was like, there's so much talk about progression. I was like, but there are girls that have been sending it for a long time now, for years. And some of you guys are forgetting about that or don't even know about it. So it's like, just read up a little bit on what happened.
No, fair enough. And I think, but in each, the free riders aren't necessarily looking to the freestylers for, as far as, from a historic standpoint, I think a lot of people are looking, although having said that, the amount of bump skiers though, too, if when you go through it now, it's like, there's you, there's Hedvig, there's Justine, who's just, there's actually tons of you come from a mogul skiing background, which is funny because I was having another discussion with with Julie Zell, the winner of the first ever Verbier Extreme in women's snowboarding, and she's, because let's admit it, there's quite a few people that think that the women's snowboarding really kind of isn't living up to the reputation of the Freeride World Tour in recent years, and she just says it's because people have skipped the basics. They don't have edge control, and I think when you're competing in the alpine events, and apparently mogul skiing really helps as a background for the Freeride World Tour. Your history, you also need to know your technique.
Yeah, but I mean, that being said, I think. Yeah, I think the mogul skiers are good in the air, but the edge control even myself, if you compare to Jeanette Hargy, the Hargeen sisters, and Ava Walkner, and all these people that come from racing backgrounds. I mean, the level of the ski technique from those women is a lot higher than what we're seeing even today.
No, fair enough. When you look down the list of Verbier champions, like all those, the Hargan sisters in 2011, 2012. I mean, yeah, there's Ava in 2017, obviously world champion as well. So, but no, I think a solid alpine background definitely helps, no matter where you come from. So when it came time to retire in March of 2020, you posted on social media that you only had 2 regrets. And when you were third in the world in 2020, why did you retire? Why did you think it was time?
It was a really hard year for me that last season. My mom had just died the October prior, and I had help with things that no child should ever have to do with a sick parent. And that was pretty heavy for me. And I probably shouldn't have competed that year, but I felt like I had to. But I was literally crying every day. I stepped down from the PFB. I struggled, and I felt like I needed to go and do something different, take a step away, because the tour consumed so much of your time during the winter, and there were other things within skiing that I was interested in. And I don't know, I felt like there was definitely a bit of a generation shift. A lot of my friends had retired, and I just thought it was time to try something new. I really wish I had, that the pandemic didn't break out and could have finished in Verbier that season. So it feels a bit like it's not quite finished chapter. It feels a bit like I don't know.
Was it a bit disappointing to not be able to finish off with one last run down the Bec d'Os? And I heard that when you were filming for Here Hold My Kid, and we're going to get on to some funnier and more fun to talk about subjects like that you actually put your competition skis back on when you were in AK, and it kind of gave you a little bit of taste for competition again. If they were to give you a wild card for the Extreme, would you accept it?
I would. I don't think they will, though.
Okay, throw down the gauntlet. Nico Halwoods. Remember what happened the last time you gave her a wild card? All right, we'll see.
They don't want a 41-year-old mom in there.
I think that would be absolutely awesome. And you want it. I mean, Xavier Delerue said he wouldn't even accept it if they gave him one nowadays. So, all right.
Well, if you ever want a 41, oh shit, I'd be 42.
Okay, your goals were to push your own limits and represent what women are capable of, and you definitely lived up to that on your just over a decade's worth of competing on the Freeride World Tour. Then it all came to an end, and it was just you at home. Now, you'd moved. When did you move to Sweden?
I've been here for like 8 years now. It's been
Okay, so while you moved to Sweden while you're still on tour. So you're back in Åre, and Reine's still on tour. How'd you cope with that? I heard there was a bit of friction. I'm going to be honest about this.
Not that first year. That first year was because I had a big project that I was planning. I had this big expedition that was supposed to take place in North America, but with the pandemic, it got changed. So I remember the first 2 events that year, I was doing a film shoot with Picture, my clothing sponsor. And I remember just thinking, like, this is way more fun than being at the competition. It was easy that year to be away. It was very easy that first year to be away because I had so much going on. I had this one movie that I was taking part in, another movie that I was producing, and they were still within the pandemic, so it wasn't the tour like we remember it. So that year was easy. It was the following year, and maybe the year after, that was difficult because I was home pregnant.
Yeah, of course.
By myself. That was hard.
But in that first year, though, you've talked about the two projects. So Arctic 12 was the documentary about skiing Sweden's 12 highest peaks over 2,000 meters, and Homelines was the film that you filmed with Picture Organic Clothing in somewhere in France. Where was it in France?
In Beaufortin.
In Beaufortin. So, and that was all hiking. You did a lot of hiking in both of the films, but it seemed like you had a heck of a lot more fun filming Homelines than Arctic 12.
100% more fun.
Yet Arctic 12 was the one that you organized.
After more than 30 years of skiing mountains all over the world, I never really looked seriously into what my home, Sweden, has to offer.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
The Homelines, it was a great crew, even though I didn't know a lot of the people who was meeting them for the first time. But it was spring skiing in the middle of February. But it was still a great time. The Arctic 12 was a bit more intense, both the mission as a whole, me taking on the project as the producer, and the crew did not get along, so that made it tough. But Reine was with me for that, so that helped a bit.
This expedition was the most fatiguing I've ever been mentally.
As we men can be, to how your actual feelings while you were out on the snow. There was one line from that film where he said, "I was really upset to hear that Jackie couldn't pick any one moment from the 26 days that really gave her joy," and that kind of made me think about all the other stuff that you'd been through. And I hope that things are more joyful on a regular basis nowadays than they are dark. And I was hoping actually that Homelines was filmed after Arctic 12 because that would have been the perfect pick-me-up, but it sounds like it was the reverse.
No, but after that, I went and filmed an episode with Patty Graham and Jono in Benson.
I'm Paddy Graham. Join me as I track down my heroes of free ski.
Late spring, or was it even summer?
It would have been late spring, so I think it was in May. They met us. So they met us up there,
and it looked like you had an awesome time.
Yeah, it was good. It was a nice change of. It wasn't really a change of scenery, but it was a nice. It was a good crew.
Change
it was a good
of
time.
pace and attitude.
Yes, definitely.
Cool, awesome. I did not know that you could barbecue bread either. I found that out watching that today too.
Pin bread.
That was awesome. And then on March 10th, 2022, Tor came into your life.
Yeah. He's crazy. And nobody has much sympathy for us because when we tell him that he's crazy, they're like, well, what did you expect if the two of you are having a child? But he is the best thing that's ever happened to the both of us. I think I can say I haven't slept in 2 years. He's not 2 years old yet, but I definitely didn't sleep the last months of the pregnancy out of discomfort. And I haven't really slept since. But he's still the best thing to ever happen to us. And he has already started his training to beat Max Palm on the tour in about 18 years, 17 years, however old. Because I believe when Max was born, Reine had started competing.
Okay, so that's actually a thing. This can happen.
Yeah, it could actually happen.
Okay, is he doing triple backs on the trampoline already, or?
He actually has started, he'll go on the back of the couch and he puts his hands over his head and does backward rolls off the couch. He jumps from the sofa to the sofa table. He jumps off. He only enjoys skiing if he can go fast. He's already started trying to jump, even though he doesn't know how to turn or brake and his boots don't fit. He's a freak of nature for a 22-month-old.
That's awesome. I can't wait to
so
follow the rest of the adventures of Tor. Now, is it Tor Paaso or is it Tor Barkered?
It's Tor Paaso.
Tor Paaso. There you go, Jackie. Throwing down the Throwing down the law. I want to say throw down the gauntlet, but I'm searching for the expression there. But in any case, congratulations on claiming the last name on the young man. Good deal. Which is a perfect segue into our next little chapter here. Your latest film project, Here Hold My Kid, which has created quite an early season buzz in the ski industry, has really put a funny twist on the first, well, not year of motherhood, what, year and a half? How old were the kids when you guys started filming that?
Tor was 11 months old.
11 months. Okay. All right. And we're going to get into the actual film, but just one question. There are no friends on a powder day, as you know very well. So what do you and Reine do with Tor on the powder days? You said in a Facebook post, it takes a village to raise a kid. So I'm assuming that you've got lots of friends that you can hand him off to.
It depends on if it happens during the weekend. We're fortunate enough that skiing is our job by definition. So as long as there is, they call it preschool here, as long as it's Monday through Friday, then we don't have to have that issue. But these days, honestly, we try to kind of keep the weekends as family time because we have that option to go skiing during the week. Now that he's in daycare full time. So there's still a bit of shuffling and there's friends and there's family nearby. But if it's a weekend, we try and do family stuff and have that time together. It was before we had childcare that things were tricky, and I don't think we ever actually found a good system, but I don't know. We're still learning.
So what was
We're
it?
still
Just
learning
rock,
as
paper,
parents.
scissors to see who stayed home with him, or?
We would try and go to the mountain and kind of split up. So one person would take a few runs, and the other person. But the problem was, as soon as he started walking, that got a little bit more. When he was just a small little blob that just ate and cried and maybe rolled over, it was easy to do that. But as he got older, it got a little bit trickier. We spent a lot of money on daycare when we traveled. Too much money. It's incredibly expensive.
Indeed it is. Who came up with the idea for the film?
Elise and I had been talking for some years that we wanted to do a project. This is even before we had children. And then it just happened that we were both pregnant around the same time. Indy is about 4 or 5 months older than Tor. And Elise had approached me with this idea that she wanted to do kind of a ski comedy. And I think it kind of been in the back of my head that if we were going to do something, it would be like this, because it's not the first movie with mom skiing. But we wanted to kind of have our spin on it. And I desperately wanted to do something that was fun and not so serious and get away from, all the other serious stuff that somehow always ends up in my film projects. So for me, it was good to just have a bit of a refreshing take on life as we know it now. But yeah.
No, indeed, and it really comes across in the film as well. So, how were the early days on tour when Elise was already world champ and you were the hot new kid on the block?
We didn't really know each other that well.
Okay.
Because I think her, I can't remember her. She won in 2008, I think it was.
Yeah, she won the first year, exactly. The Extreme and the title in that first season.
Yeah, so I wasn't on the tour at all. That was kind of like my first year competing back in the States. And then she was there in 2010. She probably was there in 2009 too, but I just did the one event. So we kind of I knew who she was, of course, and we had some interaction, but it wasn't until 2011, 2012 where we really started hanging out more and became good friends. And that was through these avalanche courses that we started up with Ingrid Backstrom and Michelle Parker back in the day.
Okay, and that you guys are still doing.
Yeah, so that's how we got close. It wasn't through competition. It was through the avalanche courses.
Okay, it was through Safe As.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, interesting, cool. Now, and Reine and Cody? Are they as close in real life as you two are? Because in the film, you guys play it as they don't get along. But I mean, I know that's not true. But are they buds, or are they just kind of like, oh yeah, our wives are best friends and we just say hi?
I mean, they're friends. They don't get as much time to hang out because I mean, Reina's been over to the States a few times, and but yeah, it's not like it's portrayed in the movie. They are actually friends, and I'm sure if we lived closer, they would have more time hanging out together. But that's just not the case. And these days, it's usually one of us traveling over there.
Yeah, exactly. Fair enough. And did the two of them have a hard time playing guest stars for once?
On the Swiss trip, Jackie and Elise were joined by their husbands, Cody and Reine. They are also both professional skiers. But Jackie and Elise have informed us that it doesn't matter because the film's not about them.
When you do these things, producing it, which I'm sure like producing a big project, and especially on this scale, it's impossible that your significant other doesn't somehow get drawn into it and energy.
Yeah,
and then when you throw a child into the mix, especially a 1-year-old. So I don't think rest or a break is the right way to put it. But
no, definitely not. And as you say with the child, first rule of making films: don't work with children or animals. So you broke one of those. You broke one of those two.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. So what about the rest of the crew? You've known John O'Verity for a long time. I think you've known Adam Gendel for not quite as long, but how was it working with Jono and Gend and the rest of the crew?
I mean, the rest of the crew was amazing. It was pretty funny because one of the reasons why Jono got pulled into it was because when Elise was giving her example of what she really liked, it was a movie that Jono and Gendel had done with Hersha, like Ski Good Money Would Come, back with Legs of Steel and Patty and those guys.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, this is like, I really like this. I was like, well, I know Jono, like I'm good friends with him and I would love to work with him again. So it was an easy sell for me to get Elise convinced that Jono should be on board. And then when I approached Jono with the idea, he said, we have to involve my friend Gendel, which, I mean, without him, the story wouldn't have been the story. And it would have just been skiers trying to make a comedy, which would have fell so flat. So it was really amazing. And I think it was great too, because they're not moms, but they're both dads. Jono, has a teenager. Yeah, Ace, she's a teenager. She's, so he's gone past, but he I'm sure he doesn't remember everything because that's how you survive. But he remembers some of it. And Gendel was in it. Gendel's daughter shares the same birthday as I. She's 8 days younger than Tor. So he was right in the middle of it as well, which I think a huge thanks should go out to Gendel's wife, Camilla, who let him be away for so many weeks during this whole process. Yeah, they're great.
There you go. But
the whole crew.
He's making the big cash. He's a star. He's got all sorts of stuff going on. Now is actually because I saw his name in the teasers and stuff. He directed. Was that it? Is he the director or producer as well?
Director.
So I was like, directed by Adam Gendel, and then he's actually acting in the film as well. I thought that was awesome.
We're trying to the ski industry is not the easiest place to get money for movies, so we're making it work. But I also think he was perfect for the part. So yeah, it was great.
No, that was that was fantastic. So, would you consider that one of your that film one of your career highlights? Not just talking about competitions now, but as far as your career as a professional skier, if you could just pick one highlight and maybe a low light as well, what would they be?
I think that would be one of my highlights. Of course, it took a lot of things to get me to that point, but I think Elise and I, we got there, and Elise and I are both very proud to be in our 40s, be mothers, and still be doing this, and be able to share our experiences with others. So I think that's definitely a career highlight. Low points. There's a few embarrassing moves, like a really shitty 360 I think I did in Hakuba there's always bad freestyle tricks in Japan. That's a lesson I should learn. Never throw tricks in Japan.
There we go. That was 2020. That was 2020 exactly. That was one that Dom had written down as well. He's like, no, because I got the dates mixed up. So I was 2019 was the backflip. 2020 was this really horrible 360. So there you go. You both thought about the same one. So we're just gonna leave it right there, okay, Jackie? We're gonna keep moving on. But another fantastic subject, and I know you've had lots of these. Tell me about some of your worst crashes, or if you just have to pick one, which is the absolutely worst. And I'll just throw this in there. Have you ever thought you were gonna die?
Yeah. I think it would have been 2012 in Verbier. I think two of my worst crashes were in Verbier. There's one that's more spectacular, and that's when I tried to do Reine's long jump when we skied off for the side, off from the dogleg couloir. That was in 2017. Ava was pissed at me because we were supposed to be filming later on that season, and I tore my MCL. Turned our 1-year project into a 2-year project. So that was more like a spectacular crash, but I wasn't so afraid that I was going to die, and it was more painful. But in Verbier, there was off the Petite Bec, I don't know, it was like the second drop down or something, and I came with pretty good speed, and then just when I landed, like lost my balance and started tumbling, and I realized that I wasn't tumbling in the gut. I was more heading out towards where the exposure was. So I realized, okay, I really need to try and self-arrest. And I think I managed to stop just like a few feet before the cliff. And I think I don't remember exactly if that cliff was so big, but it was like everything that came after it. I don't know if I necessarily would have died, but I felt bad enough putting my mom through that moment. I didn't want to make it any worse. So
I can't remember, but I think that was the year that a bunch of you hit that cliff and almost all of you fell. I think only one girl out of the field actually stuck that one, and almost every single one of you hit it. Or I might be thinking of Fieberbrunn, but there was, I think it was on Verbier. Anyways, not important. But one thing though, I want to ask you, since we're talking about the Bec des Roses, should the girls be allowed to start from the top if they want to?
I listened to the podcast with Ellie. I wish I was in the room with her. I personally, I know that I have asked. I would like to, but I feel like Ellie, it's from a bit more selfish. I feel like it's something that would go to my advantage. And it's so hard to say these days because, I mean, even the men, a lot of the men are afraid to go from the top. It's just a different, the skiing styles are a bit different these days. There's so many more freestyle tricks and stuff that are thrown into it. So I don't know how many skiers are on the tour that want to get into that stuff these days. Back in the day when it was more like traditional big mountain skiing, I think there were more women and also men that were interested in getting into that. But these days, I don't know. But if it does happen, I would like to be there, or I want to do it. But it's terrifying if you want to ski down there. Well, it's not easy for anyone except for, I don't know, maybe Reine, who like obsesses about it, and a few others. But yeah, I think it's a tough one because I would like it to happen. I would like it to be an option. But I would also like it to be an option in this, like where the show would be good.
Yeah, no, for sure. And even, why not open it up and let the guys choose their start gate as well if they want to go for a more freestyle run and ride off the Little Bec, or off the, when they put the start gate sometimes on the ridge in between the two. That could be an option as well. And then afterwards,
would you want to judge that?
Excuse me?
I said, would you want to be a judge in that situation?
Oh, no, definitely not. I would never want to be a judge, but that's where they've got the criteria down now well enough that, if you ride from the top and have any kind of, back slap or control issue, then you probably should have started, in that case, in that scenario, you could start from another start gate, do a technically perfect run, throw some tricks into it. There's other faces on tour where there's more freestyle lines than extreme lines, and they have to deal with it. It's just on the Beck, obviously, if you throw a perfect line from the top, you're going to win. But, you could think about it where if people are not technically perfect from the top and somebody is from another starting gate on the face, then, they've run in the past, not where they haven't been able to start from the top. They've put 3 starting gates on other parts of the face, and they still have to deal with it. And they're in more, I wouldn't call any part of the face playful, but in more free, in parts of the face that offer more freestyle options, or still more extreme options. So it could happen. But anyways, it's one of those questions I like to throw out there. Any last words about the tour? Anything we haven't covered about tour life, or in general that you want to say about the Freeride World Tour? I just have a couple more questions, but they don't involve contest bibs or 3, 2, 1 drop in or or anything or scoping lines. So if I missed anything that you want to say about the tour, now's the time.
I don't know. I thank you guys for putting up with me for 11 years. No, I mean, I think I don't know. It's hard to describe in just a few sentences something that was such a big part of your life. Something where you've had moments where you've absolutely loved it, you've hated it, but you've also made friendships that will last forever. So it's not just like Garrettson said, it's not just the athletes, it's the entire crew and everything. So I think it's pretty special. And even though I had those years where I was frustrated with it for whatever reason, I'm still happy that it was a part of my life and fortunate that I had that opportunity. And I think we'll always miss the Stargate, even though when you're in it, you're sometimes thinking, why the hell am I here?
Very good. Any advice specifically for young females that want to become professional freeriders one day, that want to throw that contest jersey on?
Ski.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I don't know, just aimed. I mean, these days, I don't even know. Like, should you start an Instagram account when you're 10 to make sure you get? No, I mean, just focus on skiing. Ski with everyone you can. Anyone that's going to push you, female, male, doesn't matter. Just get out there, ski hard. Ski smart, know when it's the time to send, and know that you're capable than a lot more than what others or even yourself might think at times.
2 last questions that are going to be a little bit lighter note. You are a serious mountain biker. Are you as crazy on a mountain bike as you are on a pair of skis, or is there a little bit of holding back?
I mean, I'm not as good on my mountain bike as I am on my skis, but I think I've always been holding back a little bit just because skiing is my job. So I can't afford to destroy myself on my bike, which is very easy. But if I wasn't a skier, I probably would have tried to be a mountain biker. So I guess I take a similar approach to mountain biking as I do to skiing. I'm just not as good.
Okay, we know that tour is your number one love in your life now. Reine is a close second. Where does Billy fit in? And who is Billy?
Billy is our dog, our poor dog that gets terrorized by our first love in our life now, Tor. She does not like small children that much. And oh, the poor thing. No, we care about her deeply, but she gets to spend time with her uncle. She gets her timeouts because it's just been so much. Oh, Tor's home.
And is she a Aussie cattle dog or an Australian Shepherd? I kept asking myself that question, and I can't pick it. What breed is she?
She is a mutt.
Fair enough. Okay, so she's a little of both.
Yeah, she's an Australian Shepherd. Somebody actually said, "Oh, she's just like you." She's half Australian Shepherd, Jämthund, Finsk Lapphund, I'm doing it in Swedish, German Shepherd, and Samoyed.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is a mutt and a fantastic mix by the sounds of it. And I promised only 2 last questions, but I'm going to make it 3. How's your Swedish?
It's getting better. The only problem is that I try not to speak Swedish to tour because it's not that great. Grammatically, I'm sure I make tons of errors, but yeah, I speak, read, write with the help of Google Translate. No, I guess technically I am fluent in Swedish.
Awesome. Well, you want the young man to grow up bilingual, so you speak to him in English and Reine can do the Swedish and all will be good. Anything that we don't know about Jackie Paaso that you'd like us to know, or any last words?
I'm Jackie Paaso, and I'm a professional big mountain skier. Big mountain skiing is choosing big lines, dropping cliffs, and picking your way down the mountain.
Thanks for having me on the show. I miss you guys.
Well, thank you for being with us, and we miss you too. I personally have always been a Jackie Paaso fan, and I still am. I'm also a Reine Barkered fan, so once we get off, I want you to give your man a big hug for me. And I hope to see both of you back in Verbier sometime in the future for the 30th edition, maybe. Let's see. Let's make it a date. Jackie Paaso, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic.